The screaming engines grew louder every second. German tank commanders across Normandy learned to recognize that sound. It meant death was coming at 1,150 feet per second. 4 seconds. That's all the warning they had. 4 seconds between hearing those Pratt & Whitney engines diving and feeling 45 pounds of composition B explosive punch through their armor. 4 seconds to live. Outside Cherbourg, on that June afternoon in 1944, one Panzer IV commander heard the scream. He had exactly those 4 seconds to react. The high-velocity aircraft rocket that killed him weighed 134 pounds. It turned his 25-ton machine into burning metal in less time than it takes to blink twice. This wasn't tank fighting tank. This was something new, something terrifying. The Americans called it the HVAR. German tankers had their own name, Der Himmlische Hammer, the Celestial Hammer. By summer 1944, this weapon had changed everything. The mighty P-47 Thunderbolt transformed from fighter plane into the most deadly tank killer in Europe. But this transformation didn't happen in some Pentagon planning room. It happened because young men were dying in the hedgerows of Normandy. The desperation started 6 days after D-Day. Allied intelligence had made a catastrophic mistake. They thought German armor was scattered. Light resistance, easy breakthrough. They were wrong, dead wrong. German panzer reserves sat concentrated throughout the Bocage country. Unprecedented numbers. The 12th SS Panzer Division alone had 150 tanks within striking distance of those invasion beaches. American boys were walking into a steel trap. Traditional fighter bombers carried bombs. Big ones, 500-pounders, 1,000-pounders. Weapons designed to blow up buildings and supply dumps. Against individual tanks? Useless. Absolutely useless. Picture this. You're a fighter pilot screaming toward a target at 300 miles per hour. You've got maybe 3 seconds over that tank. You need to calculate altitude, speed, wind, target movement. Miss by 30 feet, and that panzer drives away untouched. Meanwhile, German flak guns are turning your aircraft into confetti. The numbers were brutal. 8th Air Force records tell the story. First week after D-Day, fighter bombers flew 847 sorties against German armor. Confirmed kills? 23 tanks. That's a 2.7% success rate. 14 American aircraft shot down. At that rate, the Luftwaffe didn't need air superiority. German flak gunners were destroying Allied aircraft faster than Allied aircraft were destroying German tanks. Something had to change. Fast. The solution existed. It had been sitting in development since late 1943. But production delays kept it grounded. Bureaucratic resistance kept it shelved. While American boys died in Norman hedgerows, the weapon that could save them gathered dust in storage depots. The HVAR changed everything. High-velocity aircraft rocket. Instead of bombs that fell like stones, these were missiles that flew like bullets. Rockets could be aimed. Rockets could be fired from beyond flak range. Rockets traveled in straight lines at incredible speed. Each HVAR measured 68 inches long, 5-inch diameter, 45 pounds of composition B explosive packed into a shaped charge designed specifically for punching through armor. The solid fuel motor accelerated this death machine to 1,150 feet per second in 2 seconds flat. Here's what made it revolutionary. Bombs fell in arcs. Gravity controlled their path. Release altitude, aircraft speed, wind conditions, everything mattered. Rockets flew flat trajectories out to 1,000 yards. Point and shoot capability. No complex calculations needed. A single P-47 Thunderbolt could carry 8 HVARs, 4 under each wing. That gave one fighter bomber firepower equivalent to a destroyer's broadside. Concentrated death delivered with precision accuracy. The German armored forces defending Normandy represented the Wehrmacht's finest. Veterans who had survived the Eastern Front, men who had faced Soviet T-34s and American Shermans. They knew how to fight tanks. The Panzer Lehr Division, positioned near Saint-Lô, fielded 183 tanks and assault guns. These crews understood warfare. They had mastered the bocage terrain. Those ancient hedgerows provided perfect defensive positions. A single tank could control entire road networks from concealed positions. Oberst Friedrich von Hauser commanded Panzer Regiment 6th. His tactical assessment from June 10, 1944, captured German confidence. The bocage provides ideal defensive terrain for armored operations. American fighter bombers pose minimal threat when forces remain dispersed and utilize camouflage discipline. Von Hauser continued his analysis. Their bombs prove ineffective against individual vehicles. Our flak batteries exact prohibitive losses during attack runs. This reflected 3 years of mechanized warfare experience. Tanks were vulnerable to air attack only when massed on open roads. Dispersed in defensive positions with overhead concealment, they became nearly impossible targets. Soviet ground attack doctrine emphasized this reality. German commanders had learned these lessons fighting from Stalingrad to Kursk. But von Hauser's confidence was about to shatter. Like every German armored commander in Normandy, he had no idea what was coming. The rules of warfare were about to change completely. June 15, 1944, 15:20 hours, 8 P-47s from the 405th Fighter Group launched from Pickenville. Captain Robert Strickland led the formation. 47 combat missions over Europe. He had dropped bombs, strafed convoys, fought Luftwaffe fighters. This mission would be different. Target: reported Panzer concentration near Pont du Faz, 15 miles southwest of Saint-Lô. Intelligence indicated company-strength armor. 12 to 15 tanks positioned in hedgerow-enclosed fields. Traditional bombing would require multiple attack runs. Uncertain results, high casualties. Strickland's orders were crystal clear. Single pass. Fire all HVARs. Get out immediately. At 15:47 hours, they found them. Panzer foes positioned in classic defensive array. Each tank hull down behind earth berms. Camouflage netting overhead. Virtually invisible from ground level. From 8,000 feet, those angular shapes stood out clearly. The attack profile differed completely from conventional bombing. Instead of diving steeply to 3,000 feet, Strickland began his approach from 6,000 feet. Shallow, 30-degree angle. At 4,000 feet altitude and 1,200 yards range, he squeezed the trigger. 2 HVARs ignited simultaneously. White-hot exhaust trails streaked toward the target. Supersonic velocity achieved in seconds. The shaped charge warheads could punch through 60 millimeters of steel plate. More than enough for any German tank's top armor. Oberfeldwebel Hans Dietrich commanded a Panzer IV from 2nd Company. He heard the sound that would haunt German tankers for 11 months. The rising scream of diving P-47 engines accelerating in attack runs. 4 seconds. Dietrich had 4 seconds from hearing that sound to impact. Nothing he could do. The rockets traveled faster than sound at close range. By the time he heard them coming, they had already arrived. The first HVAR struck his engine deck at 30-degree angle. Shaped charge warhead penetrated the thin top armor instantly. Detonated inside the engine compartment. Diesel fuel ignited in massive fireball. The second rocket hit 3 seconds later. Turret ring strike. Traverse mechanism jammed completely. Dietrich and his crew abandoned their vehicle as ammunition began cooking off. Secondary explosions rocked the hull. Their Panzer IV became a funeral pyre in less than 10 seconds. 90 seconds. That's how long it took Strickland's 8 P-47s to fire 64 HVARs into that hedgerow position. After-action assessment confirmed devastating results. 7 tanks destroyed outright, 4 damaged beyond repair, 2 abandoned by terrified crews. American losses? 0 aircraft, 0 casualties. Complete mission success. The success of June 15th sent shockwaves through Allied command. Within 48 hours, every P-47 group in European theater received priority conversion orders. By June 20th, 1944, the 9th Air Force operated 247 HVAR-equipped Thunderbolts over Normandy. Both sides immediately grasped the implications. General Omar Bradley commanded 1st Army. He studied the after-action report with intense interest. Operation Cobra was approaching. The breakout from Normandy. German armor represented the primary obstacle. Bradley's staff had calculated conventional close air support requirements. 400 to 500 sorties needed to neutralize a single panzer regiment. The HVAR changed those calculations completely. June 22nd brought revised air support doctrine from Bradley's headquarters. Fighter bombers would abandon area bombing of suspected positions. Instead, HVAR-equipped P-47s would execute precision strikes against identified tanks. New doctrine emphasized single-pass attacks from medium altitude. Maximum pilot survival. Devastating firepower against point targets. German response came with desperate urgency. Panzer Group West commanded all armored forces in Normandy. Tactical Directive 27 issued on June 23, 1944. The document was captured after the war, now preserved in national archives. It revealed Wehrmacht recognition that fundamental assumptions had become obsolete overnight. The directive ordered immediate dispersal of armor concentrations. No more than 2 tanks could occupy any single position. Movement during daylight hours was prohibited, except under absolute necessity. All vehicles must maintain positions under triple canopy concealment. Trees, camouflage netting, additional vegetation. Most significantly, the directive authorized company commanders to abandon defensive positions immediately upon hearing American aircraft engines, before visual contact. This represented revolutionary departure from German tactical doctrine. For the first time in the war, Wehrmacht orders explicitly authorized retreat based solely on enemy aircraft presence, without actual combat engagement. The psychological impact of HVAR attacks had become as significant as their physical destructiveness. Lieutenant Werner Hoffmann commanded a Panther tank with 2nd Panzer Division. His personal diary recorded the effect on crew morale. June 24, 1944. We have become mice hiding from hawks. Yesterday we heard the Jabos, fighter bombers, immediately abandoned our position, drove our Panther 400 meters through hedgerows to new location, damaged suspension, alerted every American forward observer to our presence. When we returned 3 hours later, our original position had been obliterated. 8 rocket strikes on empty field. They would have killed us all in those 4 seconds between hearing them and impact. We are no longer fighting, simply trying to survive until the next hiding place. The tactical revolution extended beyond individual engagements. Allied intelligence officers analyzed German radio traffic intercepted through ultra-decryption. German panzer commanders were requesting permission to withdraw from defensive sectors before American ground attacks began. Mere presence of P-47s overhead triggered retreats that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. The 4-second warning had become psychological warfare. Operation Cobra launched July 25, 1944. Most intensive application of tactical air power in military history. The breakout from Normandy required neutralizing German armored reserves that had contained Allied forces for 7 weeks. HVAR-equipped P-47s would play the decisive role. The operational plan coordinated strikes against every identified German armored concentration within 10 miles of the breakthrough sector. Intelligence had located elements of 5 panzer divisions: Panzer Lehr, 2nd Panzer, 2nd SS Panzer, 116th Panzer, 9th Panzer. Together, they fielded approximately 400 operational tanks. Weather on July 25th was marginal. Broken clouds at 4,000 feet, scattered rain showers. Normal circumstances would have limited air operations, but HVAR attacks didn't require clear skies and precise approach angles that conventional bombing demanded. P-47 pilots could attack through cloud breaks, fire rockets from altitudes as low as 2,500 feet, still maintain effective accuracy. The weather advantage belonged to Americans. The assault began 09:38 hours. First wave of 48 P-47s from 405th and 406th Fighter Groups struck Panzer Lehr Division positions near Saint-Gilles. Flight leader Major Thomas Everett later described the engagement in his combat report. "We located enemy armor dispersed in wooded areas south of target coordinates. Individual tanks positioned approximately 100 to 150 yards apart under tree cover. We attacked in flights of 4, each aircraft firing 2 to 4 HVARs per pass. Visual confirmation of hits was immediate. Secondary explosions, fires, vehicles attempting to evacuate positions. We made single passes as briefed and egressed north. Total time over target approximately 4 minutes. Observed results: 12 to 14 vehicles destroyed or damaged. No aircraft losses. Whatever its clinical report didn't capture was chaos in German positions. Hauptmann Josef Hartmann served as operations officer for Panzer Lehr Regiment 130. He survived the attack, provided testimony during post-war interrogations. His account revealed psychological collapse that HVAR attacks induced. The sound reached us first. Terrible screaming of many aircraft engines in diving attacks. Then we saw them. Dozens of thunderbolts coming through cloud gaps. The rockets left white smoke trails. There was no time to react. No possibility of defense. Our flak batteries engaged, but American aircraft were too fast. Too many. In 4 minutes, my regiment ceased to exist as fighting force." Hartmann continued his testimony. Of 42 tanks operational that morning, 27 were destroyed or abandoned. Survivors retreated south without orders. Unit cohesion completely lost. We had been annihilated from above. By 1200 hours, 9 waves of P-47 strikes had hit German armor positions across 15-mile front. 9th Air Force records documented 374 individual HVAR attacks against armor targets. German casualties were catastrophic. Not just equipment destroyed, but unit coherence shattered. The psychological impact manifested in ways that transcended casualty statistics. Radio intercepts decoded by Allied intelligence recorded German tank commanders requesting permission to abandon defensive sectors. Before American ground forces arrived, entire companies withdrew based solely on reports that P-47s were operating in their sector. Without actually being attacked, the 4-second warning had become weapon of terror. 2nd Panzer Division, positioned near Tessy-sur-Vire, began withdrawing afternoon of July 25th, despite receiving no direct air attacks. The division's war diary was captured intact when headquarters was overrun July 28th. 14:30 hours entry read, "Enemy fighter bombers conducting intensive operations throughout sector. Anticipate overwhelming rocket attacks against division positions. Recommend immediate withdrawal to secondary defensive line. Positions untenable against this form of attack." The recommendation was approved. 2nd Panzer Division retreated 12 miles. Abandoned prepared positions that American ground forces hadn't yet reached. The 4-second warning had defeated them before combat began. By July 26th, German defensive line in Normandy had collapsed. First Army forces advanced 15 miles in 24 hours. Unprecedented progress after 7 weeks of grinding attrition. The breakthrough that conventional bombing and artillery had failed to achieve, HVAR-equipped P-47s accomplished in single day. The revolution in air-to-ground warfare was complete, but understanding why required examining the physics that made these weapons so devastating. Traditional bombs fell in parabolic arcs determined by gravity. Release altitude, aircraft velocity, wind conditions all mattered. A pilot dropping a 500-pound bomb from 3,000 feet at 300 miles per hour had to calculate trajectory accounting for multiple variables. The bomb fell for approximately 5 seconds, during which a moving tank could travel 50 to 75 feet. Accuracy required exceptional skill and favorable conditions. Most importantly, it required flying into effective flak range. HVAR rockets eliminated these variables completely. The solid fuel motor accelerated the weapon to 1,150 feet per second within 2 seconds of ignition. At typical combat ranges of 800 to 1,200 yards, rockets traveled essentially flat trajectories with minimal drop. Time to target from 1,000-yard launch, 2.6 seconds. A tank moving at maximum speed could travel less than 20 feet. Insufficient distance to escape the strike zone. The mathematics were inexorable. Shaped charge warheads represented sophisticated engineering developed from research into the Monroe effect. The warhead used copper cone liner that, upon detonation, formed high-velocity jet of superplastic metal traveling at 25,000 feet per second. This jet could penetrate 60 millimeters of armor plate, more than sufficient to defeat top armor of any German tank. Engine decks and turret roofs typically measured 25 to 40 millimeters maximum. German panzer designers had optimized armor protection against ground-based threats. The Panther tank featured 120 millimeters of frontal armor angled at 55 degrees, nearly impervious to most Allied tank guns, but that protection was irrelevant when attacks came from above. Engine deck armor that could withstand machine gun fire offered no defense against shaped charge jets that penetrated steel like flowing water through paper. The tactical implications were profound. Wehrmacht doctrine for countering air attack emphasized dispersal, concealment, mobility. These measures provided some protection against conventional bombs that required precise release points. Against HVARs, they proved nearly worthless. Oberst Ludwig Fischer commanded 9th Panzer Division's tank regiment. He attempted to develop countermeasures after his unit suffered devastating HVAR attacks in early August. His tactical memorandum dated August 7, 1944, was captured during Falaise Pocket Battle. We have attempted every conceivable defensive technique. Dispersal reduces casualties per attack, but does not prevent attacks. Concealment becomes irrelevant once aircraft are overhead. Pilots spot individual tanks from altitudes exceeding our visual range. Fischer continued his analysis. Evasion is impossible. We hear aircraft engines and have 4 seconds before rockets arrive. In 4 seconds, a Panther tank traveling at maximum speed moves 40 meters. This is insufficient to escape the beaten zone. Our flak batteries engage, but American pilots attack from ranges and speeds that make effective defense impossible. There is no tactical solution to this weapon system. Fischer's conclusion was stark. We can no longer concentrate armor for offensive operations. We can no longer defend terrain against determined assault. The American rocket-armed fighter bombers have achieved what their Sherman tanks could not. They have negated our armored advantage entirely. Industrial disparity compounded the tactical disadvantage. By August 1944, 9th Air Force operated 1847 P-47 Thunderbolts. Approximately 60% carried HVARs at any given time. American industry produced 400,000 HVAR rockets during 1944 alone. German tank production peaked at 1,669 vehicles per month across all types. Panthers, Tigers, Panzer IVs combined. The mathematics were inexorable. American industry could produce HVRs faster than German industry could produce tanks to destroy. Each P-47 could carry 8 rockets. Each rocket could potentially destroy or disable a tank. America could sustain hundreds of daily attack sorties. Germany was fighting industrial and technological battle it had no possibility of winning. The Falaise Pocket in August 1944 became the graveyard where German armored power in France died beneath HVAR strikes. Remnants of 7 panzer divisions found themselves trapped. Approximately 200 operational tanks and assault guns in contracting pocket southeast of Falaise. Allied forces had closed 3 sides of the pocket. Only escape route ran east through narrow gap near Chambois. To reach it, German armor had to move in daylight across open terrain under clear skies. It was the tactical nightmare that HVAR technology had made inevitable. August 18th through August 21st would demonstrate absolute dominance that air-launched rockets had achieved over armored formations. Weather was perfect for flying. Clear skies, unlimited visibility, no wind. For German tank crews, these conditions meant certain death. Major Richard Keller coordinated HVAR strikes into Falaise Pocket from forward air control post. His operational log preserved the systematic destruction. August 19th, 07:45 hours, first strike of 16 P-47s engaged armor column moving east from Troon, targets clearly visible from 6,000 feet. Tanks in column formation on open road. Multiple HVAR attacks conducted from 07:48 to 07:52 hours. Visual confirmation, 23 vehicles destroyed, 17 vehicles damaged and abandoned. No aircraft losses. 08:30 hours, second strike engaged dispersed armor in fields south of Chambois. 12 P-47s fired 96 HVARs against targets attempting concealment in bocage. Observed results? 14 vehicles destroyed. 1 aircraft damaged by ground fire. Pilot returned safely. The log continued hour after hour, strike after strike. By day's end, on August 19th, 362nd Fighter Group alone had flown 127 individual HVAR attack sorties. 9th Air Force records indicated 17 different fighter groups flew 748 total sorties into Falaise Pocket that single day. From German perspective, the experience was apocalyptic. Oberleutnant Heinrich Strauss commanded company of Panzer IVs from 2nd Panzer Division. He survived Falaise Pocket, provided detailed testimony during Allied interrogation. August 20th was the day I understood we had lost the war. My company began day with 11 operational tanks. We received orders to move east toward Chambois at 0600 hours. We knew Americans controlled the skies, but we had no choice. The pocket was closing. We moved in dispersed formation, maximum spacing between vehicles. At 6:40 hours, we heard them. The Thunderbolts. Perhaps 20 aircraft. They came from different directions, attacked in pairs. The rockets left smoke trails. We could see them coming, but there was nothing we could do. We fired machine guns uselessly at aircraft 1,000 meters distant. Strauss continued his testimony. The rockets hit with terrible accuracy. One struck my tank's engine. We were disabled instantly. I ordered crew to abandon vehicle. As we ran toward tree cover, I watched remaining tanks of my company destroyed in minutes. 11 tanks eliminated in less than 10 minutes. We never fired our main guns at enemy ground forces. We were destroyed from air before we could engage. The American after-action assessments from Falaise Pocket revealed staggering statistics. Between August 18th and 21st, Allied fighter bombers destroyed or damaged approximately 344 German tanks and self-propelled guns within the pocket. HVAR-equipped P-47s accounted for estimated 220 of these kills, 64% of total. Perhaps more significantly, German units abandoned hundreds of vehicles that sustained only minor damage. Crews refused to remain in positions being systematically targeted by HVAR attacks. The psychological defeat was total. Tanks that could have been repaired were left burning because crews had lost all will to continue fighting beneath rockets that gave them 4 seconds to live. Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge commanded Army Group B. He sent his final report to Hitler on August 20th before committing suicide. The message was intercepted by Ultra, declassified in 1974. The enemy's air superiority, particularly his rocket-armed fighter bombers, has made armored operations impossible. Our tanks are destroyed before they can engage enemy ground forces. I can no longer maintain organized resistance in face of weapons against which we have no defense. The 4-second warning had broken the will of Germany's finest field commander. The transformation of armored warfare in Europe was complete by September 1944. German panzer forces that had dominated battlefields from Poland to Moscow had been reduced to defensive forces terrified of operating in daylight. HVAR-equipped P-47 Thunderbolts had achieved what years of ground combat had not. Absolute negation of German armored superiority. The statistical record documented the revolution. From D-Day through end of 1944, HVAR-armed fighter bombers destroyed or disabled estimated 1847 German tanks and self-propelled guns in European theater. This represented approximately 65% of all German armor losses to air attack during this period. But numbers told only part of the story. Psychological impact had fundamentally altered how German forces employed armor. Wehrmacht tactical doctrine in early 1944 emphasized armor concentration for breakthrough operations and counterattacks. By autumn 1944, German armor operated in dispersed packets of 2 to 3 vehicles, moving only at night, refusing to concentrate even when tactical situations demanded it. The 4-second warning had revolutionized warfare. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Armored Troops, acknowledged the revolution in his post-war memoir. The American rocket-firing aircraft, particularly the P-47 Thunderbolt, made conventional armored operations impossible by mid-1944. Our tanks could defeat any Allied tank in direct combat, but they never reached direct combat. They were destroyed from air before ground engagement occurred. The 4-second interval between hearing attack and rocket arrival became phrase that haunted every tank commander. It was insufficient time to react, insufficient time to evade, sufficient only to understand that death was arriving. The technological disparity had created form of warfare that courage could not overcome. German tank crews were among Wehrmacht's finest soldiers, veterans who had fought across Europe and Russia. But skill, courage, determination meant nothing against shaped charge warheads traveling at 1,150 feet per second, launched from aircraft beyond effective defensive range. Americans had democratized tank killing. Before HVARs, destroying armor required specialized anti-tank units with specific training and equipment. After HVARs, any fighter pilot with adequate training could engage and destroy tanks with high probability of success. This democratization transformed battlefield calculus entirely. Industrial capacity that produced 400,000 HVAR rockets in 1944 represented level of military, industrial mobilization that Germany could not match. Even if German engineers had developed equivalent weapons, which they attempted unsuccessfully, German industry lacked capacity to produce them in meaningful numbers, while manufacturing tanks, artillery, aircraft, all other war material. Lessons learned from HVAR combat employment influenced military aviation for decades. Principle of delivering precision strike capability from beyond effective defensive range became fundamental to air-to-ground doctrine. Korean War fighter bombers carried direct descendants of HVAR. Vietnam-era aircraft employed similar weapons. Modern precision-guided munitions represent technological evolution of same concept. Destroy ground targets from standoff ranges using weapons too fast to evade. P-47 Thunderbolt, equipped with HVARs, had transformed from fighter aircraft to flying artillery. Each aircraft carried firepower equivalent to naval destroyers' broadside. Deliverable with precision against individual targets. This transformation represented one of most significant tactical innovations of World War II. Achievement of precision strike capability from aerial platforms. For German panzer forces in 1944 to 1945, HVAR represented unsolvable tactical problem. 4-second warning from engine noise to impact was insufficient for any effective response. German commanders who had mastered complexities of armored warfare found themselves helpless against threat they could hear but not defend against. See coming, but not evade. The streams of HVAR rockets that arced across European skies in final year of war carried more than high explosives. They carried future of warfare, recognition that technological superiority combined with industrial capacity could render conventional military excellence obsolete. German tank crews who heard that 4-second warning understood they were experiencing not just tactical defeat, but end of era. Era when courage and skill could compensate for technological disadvantage. The revolution was complete. Industrial warfare had achieved its full expression. The 4-second warning had become sound of inevitability. Arriving at 1150 feet per second,